And with that, welcome to College Football Wraparound CFP Ranking Show. I'm your host, Cooper Naylor, and it is so great to finally be back after a long break. So it's been one crazy time between the last time I came live here on YouTube and, of course, tonight. We've had some dealings with with family going on, so that's always got to tend to that kind of stuff. But well, anyway, we're back, and I hated that I left you, the viewers, out for a while because I know y'all had got so accustomed to me coming live every week with some great college football analysis. And look, it's even great because I've got a Christmas tree beside me, and it makes me so happy to say that we are getting close to Christmas. And for any of you who are subscribed, and you should know this by now, but we actually will be having a Christmas special coming out on Christmas Eve. You can check that out when it comes out. I've asked a few of my friends, well, more than a few, about almost everybody I know. I've asked for them to send in little videos of themselves, and, well, you will be surprised. This is going to be fun, and you're not going to want to miss this on Christmas Eve. It's going to be at 7 o'clock, so don't miss it. 7 o'clock, Christmas Eve 2021. It's going to be epic. I will be hosting, of course. But I will tell you, I put two skits of my own together, and if you are a big comedy fan, be ready, because I'm coming for you, because it's funny what I've got coming for you. So, of course, we got to dive into the rankings for today, and they had just came out about an hour ago. So, let's dive in. Georgia stays at number 1 after beating Tennessee at Tennessee 41-17. Bama stays at 2 after a beatdown of New Mexico State. Oregon, after a 14-point win against Washington State, they stay at 3. Ohio State at 4, Cincinnati at 5, Michigan at 6, Michigan State at 7. So the top 7 is the same as we saw last week. It's a little new because for us, the viewers, because I have not been on whenever the same top 7 have been here. So, a little bit new for me, so we'll get through it. Notre Dame is at 8. At 9, Oklahoma State. At 10, Wake Forest. 11, Baylor. 12, Ole Miss. 13, Oklahoma, which is, I think it's appropriately fitting for where Oklahoma should be right now. BYU at 14. They don't move at all. Wisconsin at 15, Texas A&M at 16, Iowa at 17, Pitt at 18, San Diego State at 19, NC State at 20, Arkansas at 21, UTSA at 22, Utah at 23, Houston at 24, and Mississippi State is kind of the head scratcher for this one, with being 6-4 and making it to the 25th rank in this week's rankings for the CFP committee. So, with all of this being said, it's now time for me to react to what I am seeing. Now, the top 7. I like it. I like it a lot. I think Cincinnati's appropriately ranked. I think everybody in this top 7 is appropriately ranked. Now, there have been conversation between Michigan and Michigan State because of Michigan State having the head-to-head win over Michigan, and then, of course, as most of y'all know, Michigan State would go to Purdue the next week, get beat, and now Michigan and Michigan State are both have a 9-1 record, and Michigan is ahead of them at 6, and Michigan State's at 7, and of course, Michigan State has the tiebreaker. So, of course, the big topic right now is how come you've got Michigan ahead of Michigan State? Well, here's the reasons. Michigan, their loss is at Michigan State, who at the time was a really good team. And Michigan State still is a good team. Michigan State's loss to Purdue is against an unranked Purdue. So that's what the difference is right now. And of course, I believe that for Michigan State, if they end up beating Ohio State this weekend, which it's a game, and that's the one that I'm going to be diving into because that's our game of the week here on Saber Broadcast Network, Michigan State and Ohio State. I mean, you think about it from Michigan State's standpoint, you win this game, and this could be a huge stepping stone for success for Michigan State in getting back to the college football playoff. Now, we all know right now, Georgia, Bama, Oregon, and Ohio State, this is probably not going to be the same four as what we're going to see at the end of the year. But it is interesting to see how Georgia has really become the team that they are the most dominant. And then, can we really say that there's another team that's really close to as good as Georgia right now? In my opinion, you can't say that because you look at Georgia and they're all around incredible at football. And then Alabama, if you've watched them all season, Bama has struggled here of late. And I think that you have to consider what happens in that SEC championship game. What if Alabama were to win that in a close fashion against Georgia, who is undefeated, and most likely will stay undefeated the rest of the year? So you got a one-loss Alabama versus a no-loss, unbeaten Georgia in the SEC title game, and Bama wins that game, and both teams are in the college football playoff. And if Oregon and Ohio State win, they're possibly in the playoff as well. And then you got to factor in all these other factors like, okay, Notre Dame, Oklahoma State, Wake Forest at this point has got to be in there because they're a one-loss team unless they lose again. So the question is from here, what's going to happen the rest of the season? And I think that a lot of this conversation is being based off of what happens in the SEC title game. The SEC title game is going to be a huge game for the committee to look at and see where do they want to go. Now, I think a team that's really interesting here in the rankings, and I think Mississippi State, like I said, being 6-4 and being the 25th rank, is really interesting to me. And I'm not saying Mississippi State's a terrible football team. I'm not saying that they don't deserve it. I'm just saying that looking at their record, being 6-4, are they really worthy of a 25th rank? So I think there's a lot you can factor in to what you're seeing. But I think Mississippi State, you got to count though. I think that yes, they deserve it, but they also don't deserve it with their record. But of course, when you're looking at the CFP committee and their rankings, record's really going to be thrown out the window, and they're going to put the 25th best teams in those spots. And another one I think's interesting is Oklahoma being 13. Here's the question for me. If Oklahoma is 13 right now, where do they end up if, let's say, they win the Big 12 championship, they win out at this point? Do they get in if Georgia were to lose an SEC title game and Bama's the SEC champion, Oregon's won the Pac-12, and Ohio State's won the Big 10? Do we see maybe Georgia, who is the best team right now in college football, do we see them get jumped by Oklahoma, who most of the season has really looked poorly? I mean, offensively, the big thing for Oklahoma right now, they've got to figure out who is their quarterback right now. If they can figure that out, I think that that's going to go a long way for Oklahoma to have a chance to win the national championship. I don't think they can win it without figuring out who is the quarterback of this team. So, the big question is for Oklahoma, Spencer Rattler or Caleb Williams? And so, I think that you got to be aware of who your quarterback is. So, we'll see what happens. So right now, before I start recapping week 11 and previewing week 12, I want to get into some of your comments. So for the next 2 or 3 minutes, hit me up with some really great questions that you would really love me to answer. Of course, there's a lot you can ask me about football, but I'm going to get into the questions that are already on here. Please keep commenting. Tell me what you think and who do you think is looking really good in your mind. And then just keep on asking me questions. I want to see this. First question from Colton. Will Clemson finish well? Well, I'm going to have... If you're okay with this, I'm going to look up their schedule just for a second, because I know they've got to go to South Carolina. And honestly, with how Clemson's played this season, I don't know if that's a given. I really don't think that's a given at this point for Clemson. I mean, not trying to be a downer on them. They got Wake Forest coming into town this week. So, Wake Forest, then South Carolina. If you're a Clemson fan, well, if this makes you feel bad, I'm sorry. But, does 75 sound good to you? It's a possibility at this point. So, I'm sorry, Clemson fans. Wake Forest and South Carolina, that's a tall task at this point with how historically bad this Clemson team has been. I mean, and you even think about this. They just won the ACC just last year and made the college football playoff. So that's, I don't know. It's a crazy season. Colton says, will Western Michigan win tonight? Well, they are currently in progress. I've got both football games coming on right now from the MACtion action. And Bowling Green right now is up in Miami, Ohio, 7-6 right now. You can find that on ESPNU if you are wondering about that game. And on ESPN2 is Western Michigan and Eastern Michigan. Western Michigan currently has football, and they're in the red zone, and they're up 7-3. So that is what is going on right now in the college football world. So okay. The next question is, who is the next Virginia Tech coach? Well, the question here is, and for me basically, is this is not a bad job, but is this a good job? So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, honestly, I think you could see I don't know. There's a lot that goes into it, but I think a guy that would be really interesting to be offered the job, and I don't know his name, but Wake Forest's offensive coordinator would be really interesting right here. Of course, staying in conference, this would be an interesting hire, I would think. Let's get to more questions. Rad Rusty has said, Alabama-Arkansas football win and score prediction. Ooh, this is good. Now, I will say I'm a little biased towards Alabama, and so I honestly think with how Alabama's offense has struggled this season, I think you're going to see a game where I think this is going to be a lot like Alabama-LSU this season, where it's going to be a bare-knuckle fight from the beginning, defensive football game, like you would want to see from like 10 years ago. If this were 10 years ago, this was the football games you wanted to see. What's the 20-14 games? So I'm going to say this. I think that you're going to see Alabama possibly win this game. And I'm going to say around 24 to 14. I think that's the score you're going to be seeing. And so that's where I'm going. 24-14 Alabama. And Warren Ruggiero is the offensive coordinator of Wake Forest. I think this is actually would be a really good hire for them. Think about it. Sam Hartman has had a good season, so we'll see. And then Corey also said, "Will you do the milk crate challenge?" No. I'm sorry. And I don't want to be harsh on people because I know there's good and bad people in this world, but I think you're seeing some of the stupidest people in this world doing a milk crate challenge, which, well, even like I've seen where they've done it on pavement. It's stupid. Trust me. I think it's stupid. So, please, don't get mad at me. This is just me being realistic with you. That's stupid to put milk crates and stack them up and try to walk on them, and you have pavement. Your head is not protected, sir, madam. Stupid. Don't do it. And then Corey also says, "Would you do it if you can get 100? No. Alright, well. Thank you for all the questions. Of course, I've seen that there are a lot more coming in. So, and Chris Naylor has said, Bama 45-10. Well, I'm sorry, my friend. I don't think it's going to be like that. I'm sorry. So, it's time to get into the rest of our show tonight. And, I mean, there's a lot going on in the world of sports. And so, recapping last week, Bama with the big win. Offense looked really good against a very bad team, which is New Mexico State. Good, the offense looked good, but did it prove to me anything? No. It didn't prove to me anything that that in SEC play, Bama's going to play any better in offense. It doesn't prove anything to me at all. And so, Alabama's got 2 games against Arkansas and Auburn coming up in the SEC. Honestly, 2 good games I think that you're going to see from Alabama. And it'll lead into an SEC championship game where Alabama will be playing Georgia, which is going to be a fun matchup, as you all know. So, Alabama, interesting game, but it didn't prove to me much. It was a bad team they were playing anyway. Georgia, 41-17 over Tennessee. Well, Georgia's defense, most that they've given up. Is this a sign that they're getting tired? And are they running out of steam? And, this is interesting, I think. Because what happens if just the right offense comes in and beats Georgia? And I've been talking about this most of this season. What happens to Georgia when they get to a game where an offense is just too good for your defense and you have to rely on your offense to help you win a game? What's going to happen for Georgia? So, and they haven't had a game where they really had to. The last few games they've given up points to begin the game to teams, but it's not been huge amounts of points though. It's been like 7 points. So, for Georgia, what happens if you get down let's say 28-0 against Alabama in the SEC title game? What happens to your defense, and what's gonna? There's a lot you can say right now, but what will happen? So, that's interesting. Oregon squeaks by Washington State 38-24. Well, I think this is going to be setting up for Oregon to win the Pac-12. So, I think it was a good game. And again, the game that was the biggest game last week was A&M and Ole Miss, where Ole Miss took down A&M, and Ole Miss just, they looked dominant. They were the dominant force that night on Saturday. I mean, they were too good for A&M, and A&M didn't look like they were ready to come play. But a game that I want to get outside of the top 25, and I want to go outside and maybe the most shocking upset we'll see all season long. And even though this team I'm talking about is not very good, it's still maybe the biggest upset we'll see all season, and that is Kansas taking down Texas. That was crazy. And I was watching the end of that game where the walk-on catches the 2-point conversion to win the game. That was the biggest upset I'm going to see in a long... in my years of watching college football, that's probably one of the biggest upsets I've seen ever. And like I keep saying, Texas is not that good of a team this season. But if you watch that game, you know that Kansas had a big lead and Texas played terrible. Texas has lost 5 games in a row since starting 4-1. Since going to halftime against Oklahoma, they have been awful. So the big question here is going to be, next year, what is Sark going to do for Texas? It's going to be interesting for sure. And we'll all see what happens. But Texas, I feel like you're in danger right now. You had better watch out, because this is not looking good for your team at all. Alright, well, that's it for recapping the last week. But now we got to preview this week. And trust me, there are a bunch of fun games this week, including Alabama and Arkansas. Now, that's a good game, but of course, Ohio State, Michigan State is going to be the big game of the week. Kenneth Walker, the running back for Michigan State, has been the best running back by far in college football. He's going to be... This is his stage. He had a lot of Heisman moments against Michigan. But now, here's the biggest stage you're going to have all season against Ohio State, who Ohio State is number 4 in the country right now. This is going to be the biggest stage for a Michigan State team who, in all reality, if you beat Ohio State, I mean, in my opinion, how are you left out of the top 4 if you beat Ohio State and you're 1 loss? I think that they would jump Cincinnati and Michigan. Michigan State would jump them to get to number 4. And you would see the same 4 from the first initial CFP rankings. I actually think Michigan State would jump that high. Michigan and Cincinnati, they're not going to move. And, Ohio State could easily be down to like 8 or 9 at that point. Because I don't see Notre Dame just sitting where they are if Ohio State loses. Could you? So, if I'm going to bet on this game, I'd go safe and go Ohio State. But don't be shocked if Michigan State wins this game, because this is going to be an interesting game for all to see. This is going to be a national game in the early window on ABC that's really going to be a highlight of the day. So we'll see what happens, but I think Michigan State, if they play right and if Kenneth Walker leads that team, they could win this game. So, and then Alabama, Arkansas. So the 2 games I've mentioned are probably like the top 2 games. Alabama and Arkansas is going to be a defensive slugfest. I think Bama wins at 24-14, and I think that what you're going to see is maybe Arkansas comes out with like a 7-3 lead at halftime, and Bama just puts on 21 points in the second half, and of course Arkansas will score another touchdown. But this is going to be an interesting game. And Arkansas has played a great season so far, and I expect them to be in a great bowl game. I think they're going to have a great bowl game, and quite honestly, I think they're going to be a team where you could possibly see like a 9-4 season for the Razorbacks. Because let's be honest, they're not going to lose to Missouri. Arkansas will not lose to Missouri. Missouri is a terrible football team right now. Arkansas will not lose that game. So, that is week 12. That's my preview of it. Of course, I see that we have a lot of comments coming in at this point, and Rad Rusty has commented, "Roll Tide." Good for you, and I'm happy. Roll Tide. So all of you think this game's going to be a lot more higher scoring than what I'm saying. Well, okay, go ahead, and I understand. But another question coming back from earlier, is Oregon going to make the playoff? Well, I don't see them losing again. Do you? So, I mean, I think they're going to beat Utah twice, and Oregon's going to be in the playoff right there. Honestly, if you look at the 4 teams you've got here, Oregon really has the easiest road to make it to the playoff. They're not going to lose. Oregon's not going to lose. If they do lose, then that's a shame, because they've got the easiest road of all 4 of the top teams in this ranking that is left. So, it's gonna be interesting, but I think Oregon's probably in. And then Colton has said Cincy gonna win the national championship. Not so fast, my friend. No, they won't. They're not even gonna make it. Because I bet you anything, if Georgia wins the SEC, and you have a lot of parity, Notre Dame is going to get ahead of Cincinnati. Even though Cincinnati would have the tiebreaker, you got to go back and look at this, and that is Notre Dame being the most popular team in college football history. Everybody who thinks of football, college football, they think Notre Dame. That's why they are going to get to the playoff. So, sorry, Cincinnati fans. For you Cincinnati fans out there, I'm sorry. What you would have had to do this season, and you didn't do it, Cincinnati was going to have to win every game by at least 40 or 50 points. And that did not happen. So that's your issue right there. And so that is where I leave you tonight. It is 8 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in tonight. And we'll be back Saturday. So get ready for that. Of course, like I said, we have had a busy last few weeks. So we'll be back Saturday, Lord willing. And thank you for tuning in. This has been College Football Wraparound CFP Rankings Show. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you